My wife cheated with her boss, then sued me for half of our $1.2 million house and $300, $0 in savings after I uncovered her affair and cut her off. Turns out she was planning to leave me for him all along. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to catch his wife cheating on him, but life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. The craziest part. It all started with the little things, small, almost unnoticed signs that in hindsight were screaming at me. My wife seemed more distant than usual, snapping at me over petty stuff, canceling plans last minute and always having a work emergency that kept her late. At first I thought she was just stressed, maybe overwhelmed with her job at that fancy marketing firm. She was always busy, always on her phone, but I figured that was just her being professional. Then came the weirdest part. I noticed her hiding her phone more often, and whenever I'd try to look at her screen, she'd quickly turn away or claim she was just checking emails. She'd make excuses about how her boss, Mark, was pushing her hard lately, saying he was a demanding jerk and that she was just doing her job. Yeah, right. I bought it at first, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One night I came home earlier than usual from work. I've been working late a lot, but that evening I decided to surprise her. I walk into the house and it's dead quiet. No sign of her. The house is spotless, which isn't unusual, but the fact that she's not even around when she's supposed to be working late. That's odd. I check her phone, something I'd never done before, but I was feeling suspicious. Her messages were mostly work stuff, but then I saw it. A text from Mark sent earlier that day saying, "Can't wait to see you tonight, I've been thinking about last time." My stomach dropped. I scrolled further and found more messages, flirty, suggestive, about meeting up after hours, about how much they enjoyed their last encounter. My blood turned cold. I couldn't believe it. My wife was cheating on me with her boss. I felt stupid for not seeing it earlier, but I also felt a rush of rage. I wanted to confront her right then, but I knew I needed to be smart. I needed proof, and I needed to plan how to handle this. The next day, I decided to follow her. I didn't want her to suspect I knew. I waited until she left for work, then I followed her to a fancy downtown hotel. I watched her go inside with Mark, her boss. They went into a room together. I couldn't see what was happening inside, but I knew enough. She was cheating. My wife, the woman I married, was lying and sneaking around behind my back. I felt a mix of betrayal, anger, and sadness I'd never experienced before. That was just the beginning. I knew I had to do something, but I also knew I couldn't just blow up and lose everything in a fit of rage. Not yet. I had to be strategic. I couldn't let her get away with this, not without consequences. My head was racing with plans, with questions. How long had she been doing this? Did she plan to leave me for him? How deep did her deception go? All these thoughts swirled in my mind as I watched her walk out of that hotel, her face looking guilty but also strangely triumphant. I kept a close eye on her for the next few days. She acted normal at home, but I could see her tension, her nervousness. I also found out she'd been draining our joint account, about $300, $0, over the last few months, supposedly for business expenses. But I knew better. She'd been planning her escape, and I was just catching up. That's when I realized she was not just cheating on me. She was preparing to leave me, to take half of our assets, our house, our savings, and walk away like I meant nothing. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. All the trust, all the years we spent building our life together, it was all crumbling. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and the worst part was feeling so powerless. I wanted to do something, but I also knew I had to be careful. The game had just begun, and I was about to fight back in ways she never saw coming. After the initial shock wore off, I started piecing things together. I knew was planning her escape, and honestly, I felt like I'd been played from the start. She always had a way of making me feel guilty for questioning her, calling me paranoid whenever I brought up her late nights or her secretive phone habits. But now, looking back, it was all clear. She'd been grooming her exit for months, draining our savings, hiding her affair, and lying through her teeth. I decided I couldn't just sit around and let her take everything. I had to do something, but I also had to be smart about it. First, I hired a private investigator. I didn't want to make any rash moves, but I needed undeniable proof of her plans. The pie followed her around, tracked her calls, and confirmed she'd been meeting Mark regularly, even after hours. She'd been telling me she was working late or out with friends, but she was with him. That was it, no more guessing. I had the confirmation I needed. Meanwhile, kept up her act of being the perfect wife. She'd come home, pretend everything was fine, and act like I was overreacting. She was a master at lying, but I knew her game now. I'd found bank statements showing she'd transferred large sums of money to an account under Mark's name. That was the final nail. She was planning to leave me, and she thought she could get away with it because I was blind to her lies for so long. One night I confronted her. I told her I knew everything: the affair, the money she'd stolen, the plans to leave. She looked at me with that fake, bitchy smile she always used when she thought she was winning. "You're overreacting, Jason," she said, rolling her eyes. "It's none of your business. I work hard. I deserve a little fun. Mark's just a friend." Yeah, right. The way she said it, the way her eyes darted away when I pressed her, told me she was lying. I could see the guilt bubbling under her veneer of arrogance. Her reaction only fueled my rage. I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. How could she lie so easily? How could she pretend she was innocent when she was planning her escape? I knew I had to do something drastic. I couldn't let her walk away with half our house, our savings, everything we'd built. I'd worked my ass off for that. The next day, I called my lawyer. I wanted to know my options. The house was worth about $2 million, and we had about $300, $0 in savings. I told him everything I knew, and he confirmed I had a solid case for a legal separation, maybe even divorce, especially if I could prove her infidelity and financial misconduct. I also found out she'd been planning to sue me for half of everything. She'd hired a lawyer, even though I hadn't told her I knew. That was a shocker. She was already planning her move, and I was just catching up. I decided I'd fight for what was mine. I wasn't going to let her take half and walk away like she was the victim. She was the one cheating, stealing, and scheming behind my back. I wanted her out of my life, and I wanted her to pay for the betrayal. I started gathering every piece of evidence I could: texts, bank statements, the hotel receipts, her flight tickets. I wanted everything documented. Meanwhile, kept up her bitchy attitude, throwing around lies and trying to manipulate the situation. She told mutual friends I was overreacting, said I was jealous and paranoid. But I knew the truth. I saw her for what she was: a liar, a cheat, and a user. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind for so long. All the signs were there, but I ignored them because I loved her. Now I was furious, furious at her, at myself, and at the whole damn situation. I also started thinking about how to handle the house and money. I wasn't about to let her walk away with a dime of what I'd worked for. I had a plan. I'd freeze her accounts, get a court order to stop her from draining any more money, and prepare to fight her in court. I knew she'd try to spin it, say I was controlling or abusive, but I didn't care. I was done being the nice guy. She wanted to play dirty, I'd play dirtier. The most shocking part: she actually had the nerve to sue me for half of everything, claiming I'd been abusive and controlling. I was stunned. She had a lawyer already, and I had to get one too. The battle lines were drawn. I never thought I'd be in a legal war over my own marriage. But I was now. This was no longer about love. It was about survival, about protecting what was mine from a woman who'd turned into a complete stranger. I felt a strange mix of heartbreak and fury. How could she do this? How could she turn her back on everything we built? But I also knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to fight for my house, my savings, my dignity. The game was on, and I was ready to play it to win. Once I had my legal team lined up and all the evidence ready, I realized I needed to act fast. Was already making moves to secure her future. She transferred money, canceled joint accounts, and even started looking for new places to live. She was planning her escape, and I couldn't let her get ahead. The first thing I did was file for an emergency court order to freeze her assets. I wanted to prevent her from draining any more money or hiding anything else. The hearing was tense. Showed up with her lawyer, looking smug, like she already had the game won. She tried to spin the story, claiming I'd been controlling and abusive, that I was jealous and paranoid. Her lawyer argued that I was trying to sabotage her, that she deserved her fair share. I sat there, listening to her lies, feeling a mix of rage and helplessness. I knew I had to stay calm and stick to the facts. When the judge finally asked for my side, I laid everything out: her affair with Mark, the secret bank transfers, the hotel receipts, the texts, and her plans to leave. I presented the evidence I'd collected meticulously. It was clear she'd been planning her departure for months. The judge didn't buy her stories. He granted the freeze on her assets and ordered her to stay away from the house until the divorce was finalized. I felt a strange relief, like I'd just taken a big step toward reclaiming what was mine. But the fight wasn't over. His lawyer immediately filed a counterclaim, demanding half of the house and the savings. She was making her move to get as much as she could. I knew I had to prepare for the worst. I started gathering more evidence, talking to witnesses, mutual friends who might testify about her behavior and her lies. I also hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her, just in case she tried to hide assets or move money again. Meanwhile, kept up her bitchy attitude, throwing around more lies. She accused me of being controlling, claimed I had a temper, and insisted she was the victim. She even tried to turn friends against me, saying I was abusive and unfaithful myself. That hurt, but I knew it was just her desperate attempt to spin the narrative. The truth was out, and I had proof. I was determined to fight her in court, not just for the house and money, but for my dignity. The most shocking part of it all was her outright audacity. She told mutual friends that she was leaving me because I was terrible to her, that I had abused her emotionally, and that she was finally free. That was a blatant lie. I'd never laid a hand on her or raised my voice, yet she was painting herself as the victim. I couldn't believe how far she was willing to go to save her own ass. It made me furious. I also started to realize how deeply she'd been planning this. The money she drained, the affair with Mark, the fake tears she'd been crying, she was orchestrating her escape from the beginning. It was a gut punch to see how calculated her moves were. I'd been so blind, so trusting, and now I was left to pick up the pieces. But I refused to let her walk away with everything. I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. In the meantime, I started reviewing all our joint assets, making sure everything was documented. I wanted to protect the house, the savings, and any other property we owned. I also hired a financial advisor to evaluate our assets and help me strategize. I knew would try to claim she deserved half, but I had the proof that she'd been planning her exit for months. I wasn't going down without a fight. The emotional toll was staggering. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. It was like waking up from a nightmare I couldn't escape. The woman I loved, the woman I'd promised to spend my life with, was now a stranger who had been sneaking around, lying and planning her departure behind my back. Every day was a struggle, trying to focus on work, on my legal case, on rebuilding my life. But I knew I had to stay strong, for myself, for my future. Every time I thought about her, I felt a mix of heartbreak and anger. How could she do this? How could she lie so convincingly? But then I remembered the evidence. The hotel receipts, the texts, the bank transfers. That's what kept me going, knowing I had the truth on my side. I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of this. Not without a fight. The legal battle was draining, both financially and emotionally. Every day brought new surprises, new lies from, and new evidence I had to gather to stay ahead. I kept thinking about how she'd always been so bitchy, so manipulative, and how she'd turned into someone I barely recognized. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone calculating and cold. Still, I knew I had to stay focused. If I wanted to win this, I had to be smarter than her, more prepared, more relentless. One of the biggest blows came when the lawyer filed a motion claiming I was trying to coerce her into staying and accusing me of emotional abuse. I read the court papers and felt my stomach tighten. They were spinning a story to make me look like the bad guy, but I had everything documented: texts, emails, witness statements. I had proof she was the one planning her escape, not me. Still, it was a reminder of how far she was willing to go to twist the narrative. I decided to counter her claims with a detailed timeline: every lie she told, every secret meeting with Mark, every withdrawal from our shared account. I even hired a forensic accountant to dig into our finances and confirm her unauthorized transfers. It was clear she'd been planning this for months, maybe even longer. I also reached out to some of her friends, asking them to testify about her behavior, how she'd been distant, secretive, and increasingly aggressive. Meanwhile's attitude grew more bitchy and defiant. She'd come home late, sulk, and throw tantrums if I questioned her. She accused me of trying to control her, which was laughable. I was just trying to protect what was mine. The more she lied, the more I realized she was desperate to cover her tracks. She'd even started showing up at the house unannounced, trying to intimidate me or get me to back down. I refused to be manipulated anymore. I was done playing her game. Her lawyer pushed to have the court release her from the asset freeze, claiming she needed access to her funds to start fresh. I knew that was just her way of trying to hide or move money again. I fought back hard, emphasizing how she'd already transferred large sums, how she'd been planning her departure for months. I presented every piece of evidence I had, and in the end the judge sided with me, extending the freeze and ordering her to stay away from the house. That was a small victory, but I knew the real battle was still ahead. The most shocking thing was her outright lying to friends and family, claiming I was abusive, and that she was leaving because I was terrible to her. She was good at spinning stories, but I could see through her. Her words didn't match her actions. Deep down, I knew she was just trying to save face, to make herself look like the victim. It made me sick. I'd given her everything, my love, my trust, my life, and this is how she repaid me. Despite everything, I refused to give up. I kept pushing forward, preparing for the final court hearing. I hired a forensic accountant to verify all her financial moves, got witness statements from friends who saw her sneaking around, and compiled all the evidence of her affair. I knew she'd try to claim she was entitled to half the house because we were married, but I had the proof she'd been planning her escape and draining our savings. I wasn't going to let her walk away with a dime more than what was fair, and I was determined to make sure she paid for her betrayal. There was a moment when I sat alone in my house, staring at the walls that once felt like home. It hit me hard how everything had changed. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was now a stranger who'd lied and cheated her way out of our life together. I felt a deep sense of loss, but also a fierce determination. I wasn't going to let her destroy what we'd built. I was going to fight for my rights, for justice, and for the truth. That day I realized something. No matter how much it hurts, sometimes you have to fight for yourself. You can't let someone who's betrayed you so profoundly just walk away with your life savings, your house, and your dignity. I learned that being honest, prepared, and relentless makes all the difference. I won't say it's over yet, but I know I'm on the right path. I'll keep fighting until I get what's fair, and until I rebuild what she tried to take from me. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of court dates, negotiations, and relentless effort to protect what was mine. Every morning I woke up with a knot in my stomach, knowing was out there, scheming or spinning her lies to anyone who would listen. She was doing everything she could to paint herself as the victim, saying I was controlling, accusing me of things I'd never done. But I had the evidence now, and I made damn sure it was all documented and ready to be used. The big day finally arrived, the court hearing to settle everything. I walked into that courtroom knowing I had the truth on my side. Looked smug, her lawyer whispering in her ear, probably trying to prepare her for the inevitable. I could see her trying to act innocent, but her eyes betrayed her. She knew she was caught, and she was desperate to hold on to her plans, her money, her future with Mark. When the judge called the case, I laid out everything, her affair, her financial manipulations, her plans to leave. I presented the proof, the hotel receipts, the texts, the bank transfers, the witness statements. I even brought in the private investigator's report. I wanted her to see I wasn't messing around. As I spoke, I could see her squirming, her face growing pale. She tried to interrupt, to spin her story, but the judge wasn't having it. The judge listened carefully and then made his ruling. He ordered to return all the money she'd drained, froze her assets further, and awarded me full custody of the house. He also acknowledged her infidelity and her attempts to hide assets, which gave me leverage to fight her for her claims. I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about justice, about making her pay for what she did, but wasn't ready to give up. She immediately filed an appeal, claiming she needed more time to gather evidence and accusing me of harassment. Her words were venomous, but I knew better. I knew she was just stalling, trying to buy time to hide or move more money. I stayed calm, relying on my legal team to handle her tactics. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me upset or desperate. I knew I'd outsmart her in the end. The most difficult part was dealing with the emotional fallout. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry, so angry. How could she do this? How could she lie to everyone, pretend to be the innocent victim while she was secretly planning her escape? Every time I saw her face, I felt a mix of heartbreak and rage. But I also knew I had to keep my composure, stay focused on winning. That's what mattered now. During this process, I also made the decision to cut all ties with her. I changed my phone number, blocked her on social media, and started rebuilding my life from scratch. It was painful but necessary. I couldn't keep living in the chaos and lies she created. I wanted peace, and I was determined to get it no matter what it took. I also learned some hard lessons. Trust is fragile. People can surprise you in ways you never imagined. And sometimes, even the most loving relationships are built on illusions. But I also learned that if you stand your ground, gather the evidence, and fight for what's right, you can come out stronger. I might have lost my marriage, but I gained clarity and a renewed sense of self-respect. Now, I'm focused on rebuilding everything she tried to destroy. I've started therapy to deal with the emotional scars, and I've been working on my finances to secure my future. I know she's out there, probably trying to move on and hide more of her plans, but I have my eyes open. I'm not letting her take anything else from me. Looking back, I realize how much I trusted her, how much I loved her, and how blind I was to her true nature. It hurts, but I don't regret fighting for myself. If anything, I'm proud I didn't just roll over and accept her betrayal. I stood up, fought back, and now I'm finally moving toward a new chapter, one where I can finally breathe again and rebuild from the ashes of everything she tried to burn down. Now, as I sit here reflecting on everything that's happened, I realize how much I've changed. The pain, the betrayal, the anger, they've all left scars, but they've also made me stronger. I never thought I'd be the guy to go through something like this, but here I am, still standing. I learned that sometimes the people you trust the most can turn into your biggest enemies, and that's a hard pill to swallow. But I also learned that no matter how deep the betrayal, you don't have to let it define you. Losing was a blow I didn't see coming, but it forced me to confront my own boundaries and what I truly deserve. I won't lie. There are nights I still feel the sting of what she did, the sense of betrayal that lingers. But I remind myself that I fought for my dignity, my house, my savings, and my future. I fought against someone who tried to manipulate and lie her way out of accountability, and I won. This experience has taught me the importance of vigilance, of not ignoring the red flags, no matter how small they seem. It's also shown me that money isn't just paper or numbers. It's about security, stability, and trust. When that trust is broken, everything else crumbles. But if you're prepared, if you keep your eyes open and your legal options ready, you can protect what's yours. I want anyone going through something similar to know this. Don't let betrayal destroy you. Stand your ground, gather the evidence, fight for your rights, and most importantly, don't lose sight of who you are. Because at the end of the day, the most valuable thing you have is yourself. I'm still healing. I'm still rebuilding. But I'm also finally free. Free from the lies, the betrayal, and the illusion that I could fix what was broken. I've learned that sometimes walking away is the hardest choice, but it's also the right one. And I hope that anyone out there facing a similar storm finds the strength to do what's necessary, to fight for themselves and their future. Because no matter how dark it gets, there's always a dawn waiting, and I, for one, am finally ready to see mine.